From his humble beginnings in darkest Peru to his home in Windsor Gardens, London, Paddington Bear has been on quite the journey. But he's not the only one. To get ready for the release of Paddington in Peru, we're going to look back at the journeys of our favourite family to see how far they've come since the blue-coated bear entered their lives, and to make sure we're all caught up in time to go on an adventure of our own. From the moment Mrs. Brown first met Paddington, she knew he was special, and she wanted to help him find a home. In fact, she's the one that gave Paddington his name.
Paddington!
A storybook illustrator by trade, Mrs. Brown has a vivid imagination and often gets carried away by it. But one thing she can't quite imagine is the hero of her new book. Her open-mindedness and overactive imagination lead her to suspect Phoenix Buchanan, and rightly so.
How do you know he had blue eyes?
She also begins to seek adventures of her own, rather than simply writing about them, and tasks herself with swimming the channel. Her training was put to use in ways she could never have expected, and she comes to Paddington's aid when he needs it most. She then goes on to swim the channel, but then forgets her passport and has to swim back again. Oh well. When we first met Mr. Brown, he had long since traded in his motorbike for a more conservative set of wheels, and was none too keen on the idea of having a bear in the house, given the 4,000% increase in chance of disaster it would bring. Although looking back, perhaps he wasn't wrong. Henry Brown was a suitably sensible risk analyst who was not always on board with the eccentric ideas of his wife, much preferring to stay inside, perhaps with a nice face mask.
You're not telling me you believed all that guff, are you?
He originally wanted to send Paddington off to an orphanage. An institution for young souls whose parents have sadly passed on. He was the last person to believe Paddington was telling the truth about the plot to kidnap him, choosing instead to look after his family in the way he thought was right, which mostly involved avoiding banisters.
34% of pre-breakfast accidents involve banisters.
Paddington's influence rubs off on him, however, and the more he gets involved with the lovable bear's fur-brained schemes, the more adventurous and open-minded he becomes. He even scales a building to come to Paddington's aid. Would the Mr. Brown we first met have done that? According to our calculations, there's roughly a 0.0000001% chance he would have. But luckily for us and Paddington, he steps up to the plate. Remember the hero Mrs. Brown was looking for? Well, after Mr. Brown's daring acts, he got a rather familiar face. That isn't to say he's a completely changed man, of course. He still has his moments of skepticism. At first, choosing to believe that the suspicious Phoenix Buchanan is perfectly innocent. But Bullseye Brown comes back around, landing the shot that stops Buchanan in his tracks. Literally.
Bullseye.
Mrs. Bird is a tough old woman, a relative of the Browns. She lives with them and makes sure things are ship-shape. If there's one thing we all learned about Mrs. Bird, it's to never challenge her at a drinking game.
She's strong for you, huh?
Which she uses to her advantage, distracting the security guard while the rest of the Browns infiltrate the museum to rescue Paddington after he's kidnapped by the evil Millicent. And it's her excellent timing that finally stops Millicent once and for all. Luckily, when Mrs. Brown suspects Phoenix Buchanan of foul play, Mrs. Bird is the first person to believe her.
We're going to need a foolproof plan.
Not least because she thinks that actors are some of the worst people on the planet. She is quick to stand up to him on the showdown on the train too. It's just unfortunate that the shotgun she wields happens to contain, those. Great aim though. The Brown children, Jonathan and Judy, go on quite the journey, with Judy being hesitant towards Paddington when they first met.
All I was trying to do was wash my face.
She wasn't quite as excited by the opportunity of a furry housemate as her mother was, preferring to avoid the both of them in her bedroom instead. After Paddington catches a robber in front of the school, however, she realises the bear isn't so bad after all. Eventually, Judy begins to open up and even lets her mum meet her boyfriend, Tony.
Welcome to the family.
Jonathan, on the other hand, took to Paddington right away, with Mr. Brown seeing him as a bad influence on his son.
Dad's always been boring and annoying.
He dreamt of being an astronaut, despite his father's risk assessments telling him that would be a very bad idea. It's also Jonathan's knowledge of chemistry that helps them break into the National History Museum.
Potassium nitrate? Sulfur? This stuff is lethal, Dad.
Jonathan later swaps his love of rockets for a love of steam trains, and prefers to go by the name of J-Dog. And after breaking up with her boyfriend Tony, Judy starts a girls-only newspaper at her school.
You can't trust anyone. That's why I'm doing my newspaper alone.
The two put their newfound hobbies to tremendously good use, Judy using the newspaper as a front to investigate the suspicious Phoenix Buchanan, and Jonathan using his locomotive knowledge to operate a train to chase after Paddington and Phoenix, thus making steam trains cool again and raising the number of Steam Club memberships in the process. Judy goes on to win a prize for her journalism, and finally decides to let boys join the paper. Not too many though. And last but by no means least, Paddington. It wouldn't be a video about the Browns without their newest addition now, would it?
Paddington. Paddington? Oh, sorry.
This special little bear's story begins in darkest Peru, with his Uncle Pastuzo and Aunt Lucy. They lived a contented life in the treetops with plenty of marmalade to go around.
Uncle Pastuzo. They're ripe.
But when an earthquake destroyed their home and took Uncle Pastuzo, Paddington was sent on an adventure to London. After meeting the Browns at Paddington Station and being mostly welcomed into their home,
We're not giving you a home.
Paddington quickly impacted the lives and windows of everyone around him. It was his wish to buy the perfect present for his Aunt Lucy that leads to him being accused of theft and sent to prison. In true Paddington fashion, however, prison was just another opportunity to make new friends.
Good morning. How would you like to start a gardening club?
How'd you like to be buried in a very deep hole?
He quickly settles in and teaches the reluctant Knuckles how to make the perfect marmalade sandwiches.
A squeeze of lemon, a pinch of cinnamon, and just a bit more sugar.
After Paddington and some of his newfound criminal friends break out of prison and catch the real culprit, Phoenix Buchanan, Paddington returns home, but worries that he's missed his chance to celebrate his beloved Aunt Lucy's birthday. Luckily, the Browns and all his neighbours have his back, and fly her over to see London for herself.
Paddington.
Next, it will be his turn to visit Aunt Lucy, but in typical Paddington fashion, all is not what it seems.